Cruise ships, floating cities of celebration, luxury, and escape. But behind the laughter and open seas, there are stories that never made it back to shore. Passengers who vanished without a trace, families left with only questions, and mysteries the ocean has yet to give back. In this video, we uncover 5 people who vanished from cruise ships in the middle of the ocean. Story 1. It was meant to be the perfect beginning, a dream honeymoon across the Mediterranean. Warm nights, calm waters, a celebration of a new life together. But before the cruise reached Turkey, one passenger would vanish into the open sea, and nearly 20 years later, the questions still remain. This is the story of George Smith IV and the mystery that changed how the world views safety at sea. George was 26 years old, charismatic, friendly, excited to start his future with his wife Jennifer. Their honeymoon cruise was supposed to be unforgettable for all the right reasons. And at first, it was. Sightseeing, quiet dinners under the stars, nights spent dancing in the ship's lounge. Friends later said the newlyweds looked deeply in love, but as the days passed, something about the atmosphere shifted, the kind of shift you only recognize in hindsight. On the night of July 4th, 2005, George and Jennifer spent hours in the casino and later at the ship's disco bar. Security footage showed them drinking, laughing, and socializing with a group of men who were also newlyweds, staying in nearby cabins. But after 3 a.m., the timeline becomes uncertain. Jennifer briefly returned to the cabin, then left again. She was later found asleep in a hallway, and from that point on, what happened near the Smiths' cabin grows increasingly unclear. Just before sunrise, several passengers reported hearing loud noises, heavy thuds, the kind that makes you pause, even on a busy ship. Some said they saw people leaving the hallway afterward, but none of those details were ever confirmed. And the ship's cameras never captured a clear moment. Still, what happened next left no room for doubt. At around 8:30 a.m., a crew member spotted a large bloodstain on a lifeboat canopy directly below the Smiths' balcony. When staff entered the cabin, George was gone. His clothes were still inside, his belongings untouched. But he had vanished. Was this the result of a tragic fall, or was something else happening in those final hours? Authorities initially leaned toward an accident, a fall after a night of drinking, but very quickly the questions began to multiply. If it was an accident, what caused the loud thuds? Why were there reports of unusual activity near the cabin? And why was the room cleaned so quickly before all evidence could be collected? Despite searches across miles of open water, George's body was never found. The FBI launched an international investigation, but they faced challenges at every turn: limited surveillance angles, conflicting witness statements, and the complicated reality of crimes that may occur in international waters. In the years since, 2 theories have remained. One suggests a tragic accident. The other points to possible foul play, supported by inconsistencies in accounts and the unsettling timeline before dawn. The case sparked national attention. It led to congressional hearings, and it helped create new maritime safety laws meant to protect passengers and increase transparency at sea. Jennifer later shared her belief that George's death was accidental. George's family, however, has maintained that crucial questions remain unanswered, and that this story is far from resolved. Nearly 2 decades later, the disappearance of George Smith still echoes across the world of cruise travel, a reminder that even in the calmest waters, danger can remain unseen. Because every story, no matter how long it's been buried, deserves to be told. Story 2. She worked aboard a Disney cruise, a place of laughter, families, and fantasy. But one morning, 24-year-old Rebecca Coriam vanished from the ship, and no one could explain how. A crew member said she looked upset during a phone call. Then she was gone. Was it an accident, foul play, or something darker, hidden beneath the surface of paradise? Rebecca Coriam was born in Chester, England, adventurous, kind-hearted, and full of ambition. After university, she landed what many considered a dream job: youth counselor aboard the Disney Wonder, sailing the Mexican Riviera and guiding young passengers through activities and programs. Her friends and family described her as responsible and upbeat. Her family said she had a gift for connecting with people. She loved traveling, she loved the sea, and she loved the idea of helping families create memories that would last a lifetime. But behind the excitement of cruise life, Rebecca's disappearance would raise serious questions about what really happens when someone vanishes in international waters. It was March 22, 2011. The Disney Wonder had just left Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, heading toward California. At around 5:45 a.m., CCTV footage captured Rebecca in the crew lounge, speaking on the phone. She appeared distressed, pacing, brushing her hair back, wearing men's clothing that was reportedly borrowed from a colleague. Moments later, she walked out of frame and was never seen again. When Rebecca failed to show up for her morning shift, co-workers searched her cabin, but found it empty. Her ID card, which crew members used to check in around the ship, hadn't been scanned since dawn. By mid-morning, the captain informed passengers about Rebecca's disappearance. The Wonder reversed course and began retracing its path. The U.S. Coast Guard and Mexican Navy joined the search, covering hundreds of square miles of open water. Despite an exhaustive search covering hundreds of square miles, no trace of Rebecca was ever found. The official report later claimed she was swept overboard by a rogue wave, but her family and many investigators questioned whether the truth was far more complicated. There are several theories about what might have happened that morning. One suggests Rebecca accidentally fell overboard while walking on the deck, possibly during rough seas. Another points to potential foul play, an incident involving other crew members, or a confrontation that may have escalated. Some have argued that the investigation's limited transparency only deepened these suspicions. And that lack of transparency remains one of the most troubling parts of the case. The ship was registered in the Bahamas, meaning Bahamian authorities led the inquiry, not the British or American agencies. Only one officer was sent to the ship, and the investigation lasted just a single day. Rebecca's parents have long criticized Disney Wonders and the authorities for providing few answers. Her family later revealed they were shown selective CCTV clips and told conflicting stories about her final hours. To this day, no body has been recovered, and the full truth of what happened to Rebecca Coriam remains a mystery. Lost somewhere on the open sea, Rebecca's story became one of the most haunting disappearances in modern maritime history, a reminder that even in places built for joy and fantasy, darkness can still find its way in. Her case sparked calls for stronger laws protecting cruise employees and passengers at sea, and for greater transparency in international waters. But the question still remains: what really happened to Rebecca Coriam aboard the Disney Wonder? Was it a tragic accident, or did someone make sure her story would never surface? Story 3. a luxury cruise, a quiet passenger, and a disappearance the cruise line tried to erase when 40-year-old Merrian Carver boarded a Celebrity Cruises ship in August 2004. She expected a peaceful getaway, but only days later, she vanished. And the most shocking part wasn't that she disappeared. It was that no one on board ever reported her missing. Merrian Carver was from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Intelligent, private, and fiercely independent. She worked in finance, lived a quiet life, and often enjoyed time alone. Her father, Kendall Carver, was a former state senator, respected and deeply devoted to his family. To those who knew her, Merrian was thoughtful, introspective, and sometimes guarded, but never reckless. On August 27, 2004, she booked a 7-day cruise to Alaska aboard the Celebrity Mercury. Traveling solo wasn't unusual for her, so her family didn't worry. But what happened during that trip would spark one of the most troubling disappearances in cruise history. The Mercury departed Seattle on August 27, 2004. That first evening, Merrian was seen by her cabin steward. She appeared calm, composed, and settled into her room for the night. That was the last confirmed sighting of her. Throughout the entire cruise, no one seemed to notice her absence. Meals went uneaten. Her cabin remained untouched, except for her belongings neatly arranged. As the days passed, Merrian stopped showing up for meals. Her bed remained untouched. Her belongings, neatly arranged, never moved. The cabin steward grew concerned and reported the situation. Instead of investigating, he was told to continue cleaning the room and to keep quiet. He later admitted that he believed something was wrong, but management instructed him to ignore the signs. When the ship returned to Vancouver on September 3rd, Merrian's cabin was cleared out. Her personal items, clothing, a book, and other belongings were boxed up and quietly stored. Still, no missing persons report was filed. No authorities were notified. It was as if her absence had been deliberately erased. Back home, her family became alarmed when she failed to pick up her daughter. They contacted the cruise line, only to be told that no such passenger named Merrian Carver was missing. They were assured everything was fine, but everything was not fine. Frustrated and desperate for answers, Merrian's father launched his own investigation. What he uncovered stunned even seasoned detectives. Through private investigators, interviews, and legal pressure, Kendall discovered a disturbing pattern. The cruise line never reported Merrian missing. Key documents were destroyed, including logs that tracked cabin activity. Staff members admitted they noticed her absence, but were ordered not to speak. Surveillance footage that might have shown Merrian leaving her cabin was mysteriously gone. An internal memo even surfaced, revealing that crew members had discussed Merrian's disappearance among themselves, yet management insisted on silence. The official assumption was that Merrian must have gone overboard. But her passport, credit cards, and belongings were still in her room. No physical evidence supported the theory. There were no witness accounts, no emergency calls, and no entries in the ship's security records. It was as if Merrian simply vanished, and the ship continued on, business as usual. Her father refused to let the case fade into silence. His relentless pursuit for the truth led to congressional testimony, media coverage, and widespread scrutiny of cruise industry practices. He exposed how many disappearances at sea were poorly documented or never reported at all. Kendall Carver's fight ultimately helped create the Cruise Vessel Security and Safety Act of 2010, a law requiring cruise lines to immediately report missing persons and preserve evidence. His efforts brought change for countless families, but still, No trace of Merrian was ever found. Nearly 2 decades later, Merrian's disappearance remains one of the most troubling and mysterious cases in modern maritime history, not only because Merrian vanished, but because the truth seemed to vanish with her. Was Merrian Carver the victim of a tragic accident, or did something far more deliberate happen that night, something someone chose to hide? Her father's relentless search for answers forced an entire industry to confront its failures, proving how one voice can echo across oceans. But the question that still lingers is haunting. What really happened to Merrian Carver aboard the Celebrity Mercury? Story 4. A rising pop star boards a luxury cruise from Germany to Canada. Days later, he's gone, leaving behind only CCTV footage, scattered rumors, and a mystery that continues to haunt fans across the world. This is the story of Daniel Küblböck, the German idol who vanished without a trace in 2018. Daniel Küblböck was born on August 27, 1985, in Hütturm, Germany. He first captured public attention in 2003 as a contestant on Deutschland sucht den Superstar, the German version of American Idol. Known for his eccentric style, charm, and strong individuality, Daniel quickly became one of the season's most talked-about performers. His life in the spotlight was bright, but it was also complicated. Daniel pursued music, acting, and even reality TV, but often spoke about the challenges of fame, identity, and acceptance. By 2018, Daniel had stepped away from the stage, seeking peace and self-discovery. In late August 2018, Daniel boarded the cruise ship Ida Luna, a cruise ship traveling from Hamburg, Germany, to St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada. He booked the trip alone, reportedly to take time for reflection. On the early morning of September 9, 2018, the ship was sailing through cold North Atlantic waters. At around 5 a.m., a passenger reported seeing someone fall from an upper deck. The alert was raised immediately. Security footage confirmed it. A person, later identified as Daniel, was seen going overboard from the 5th deck. The ship, Ida Luna, immediately turned around, and a massive search and rescue operation began, involving aircraft and ships scanning over 300 square nautical miles of frigid Atlantic waters. But despite the scale of the search, no trace was ever found. The official investigation later concluded that Daniel was lost at sea and presumed dead. But even with that conclusion, questions lingered, and still do today. Some passengers reported Daniel had appeared distressed in the days before the incident. Others wondered whether he received the emotional support he may have needed. Reports suggested he had been facing significant personal challenges, raising concerns about whether the cruise line could have intervened sooner. Ida Luna officials stated that all proper procedures were followed, including an immediate response once the overboard incident was detected, but with no recovered evidence, no final sightings beyond the CCTV footage, and no clear explanation of what led to those final moments. The truth remains deeply unclear. For Daniel's family, friends, and fans, the grief is paired with uncertainty, the painful kind that comes when answers never fully arrive. Daniel Küblböck's disappearance remains one of the most haunting mysteries in modern pop culture, a story shaped by fame, isolation, and questions that may never be resolved. He once said in an interview, "I always follow my heart, even when it leads me far away." But no one imagined how far that would go. Today, his legacy lives on through the music and through the countless fans who still hope that one day the truth will surface from the depths. Story 5. It was supposed to be a dream vacation, a week-long cruise to Mexico filled with sunshine, family time, and memories to last a lifetime. But on the final night of the trip, joy turned into confusion, and confusion turned into fear. When a 37-year-old mother suddenly vanished, leaving behind her purse, her phone, and an unanswered question that still haunts her family to this day. This is the story of Annette Mizener, the woman who disappeared at sea in December 2004. Wally and Heidi Nerler from Waukesha, Wisconsin, had boarded the Carnival Elation with their daughter Annette and granddaughter Danielle. The vacation was something of a miracle. Heidi had won the trip in a raffle, and the family was grateful for a rare chance to relax together. For most of the journey, everything was perfect. No arguments, no concerns, no warning signs. On the final evening, after dinner, the family headed to the ship's lounge. There, Annette and her daughter Danielle took the stage together for karaoke, performing Britney Spears' "Baby One More Time." The crowd laughed and clapped as mother and daughter belted out the song with playful confidence. For the Nerler family, it was a moment of pure joy, a memory they assumed would become one of their favorites from the trip. After karaoke, Danielle returned to the cabin with her grandparents to begin packing. Annette stayed behind, but called them shortly afterward, excited about the big event of the night, bingo. She didn't want to miss it, her mother later said. She'd already won twice before. Small prizes, but it made her so happy. Bingo was scheduled for 10 p.m. Annette said she'd head there early to save a seat, but when the family arrived, she wasn't there. At first, they weren't worried. Maybe she'd stopped to talk to someone or got distracted on the way. But as minutes turned into an hour, concern grew. Annette wasn't answering her phone. She wasn't in her cabin. And passengers around them said they hadn't seen her. Then, around 10:30 p.m., a crew member discovered something chilling. Annette's purse, camera, and cell phone were found neatly placed on a lounge chair near the ship's aft deck railing. Nothing was scattered, nothing appeared damaged. It looked as though someone had set them down carefully. But one detail made the discovery even more unsettling. The security camera that pointed directly at that spot had been covered with a towel. Who placed the towel there? And when? The Carnival Elation's crew launched an immediate search of the ship. Passengers were questioned. Announcements were made. The Coast Guard was notified. But despite hours of searching, inside the vessel and across the dark waters outside, no sign of Annette was ever found. When the ship docked in San Diego, the FBI took over. They explored every possibility: an accident, a fall, a confrontation, or something more deliberate. But with the camera blocked and no witnesses coming forward, the investigation hit a wall. Annette's family insisted she would never have left willingly, especially not with her daughter on board. She had been excited about life, excited about going home, and excited about the holidays that were just around the corner. The towel over the camera remained the most troubling clue. Investigators couldn't determine whether Annette placed it there herself or whether someone else did. And because cruise ships operate under the laws of the country where they're registered, often with limited oversight, answers were difficult to find. Despite months of interviews and follow-up searches, no remains were ever discovered. Annette's family returned home devastated. A vacation that began with laughter ended in silence. Her disappearance became one of the early cases that exposed major gaps in cruise ship security. From limited surveillance coverage to inconsistencies in how missing persons were handled at sea, it sparked discussions about passenger protection and helped push for stronger safety protocols in the years that followed. Today, Annette Mizener's story remains a heartbreaking reminder of how quickly a joyful moment can turn into mystery, and how the ocean can hide its secrets without a trace. As her mother once said, "You never think something like this can happen to you until it does." Each of these names, George Smith, Rebecca Coriam, Merrian Carver, Daniel Küblböck, and Annette Mizener, represents more than a mystery. They're reminders of loved ones lost between the tides and the unanswered questions still adrift. If you believe every story deserves to be told, and every mystery deserves the truth, subscribe to Vanished and join us as we continue to search for answers beneath the surface. This is Vanished, where the missing are never forgotten,